And for those of you who are interested in in-person programs, we have a teacher that is doing an introduction to Zen meditation he's going to be at 5 of our branches in June, as well as a number in July. And again, the QR code here will take you to the page that lists all the dates and times and locations for those programs. So we've got just a couple people that are in the process of joining here. And then we're going to be talking about the healing powers of the outdoors this evening. So if you want to learn more about gardening and getting active in the outdoors, on June 14th, we have Mark Lyons, who will be talking about how you can garden to encourage pollinators into your yard. So bees and butterflies and different things. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We have a couple of housekeeping items. We would ask people to stay muted here during the presentation so that everybody can hear our presenters. If you have questions during that, you can feel free to type them in chat. You can pull up the chat window on the bottom of your screen. You'll see where it says more and 3 little dots. And if you click on that, you'll see chat in that list. We'll save the questions for the end and we'll go through chat at that time. And then if you have questions after the program completes, we'll have you do those as well. And then I'm going to flip my screen here because I would like to welcome everybody to the healing powers of the outdoors this evening and introduce our presenters. We're joined this evening by Brent Frazee, who was the outdoors editor for the Kansas City Star for 36 years before retiring in August of 2016. During that time, he won more than 50 state, regional, and national awards for his writing and photography. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Outdoor Writers Association of America in 2014 and was inducted into the Waterfowlers Hall of Fame in 2015. He continues to write, both freelancing for magazines, as an author of books, and on his website. And Brent lives on a beautiful lake in Parkville, Missouri with his wife, Jana, and his yellow lab, Billy. Brent is joined this evening by his daughter, Becky Franklin, who is a licensed professional counselor and a respected mental health provider for over 20 years. Becky began her career as a hospice chaplain and grief counselor for over 8 years. She has continued to offer therapy in a variety of settings, including her own private practice, Hands of Hope Counseling. In her free time, Becky enjoys spending time with her 2 teenage daughters and 2 dogs. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Brent and Becky.
Thank you. We're going to get our screen up here. Does everything look okay on your end for that coming up?
It does.
Okay. Perfect.
Great. Well, we're gonna get started here. This is something we've been looking forward to. Father-daughter. I'm a proud papa, but you know, Becky and I have talked informally about this very subject, and we had talked about writing a book, and we might still do that. I mean, our family was brought up in the outdoors, and the soothing powers of just getting outdoors, whether it be fishing or hiking or camping or whatever, that's something that's always struck us. It's part of what our family is all about, and Becky has seen this in action so much. I mean, more so than just anecdotally. I think you'll find some of the research that Becky has done to be very interesting. Becky, do you have anything to add?
Mhm. Well, admittedly, I was kind of chuckling as we were putting together some of our material for this evening because it did start out innocent enough that, as soon as I was old enough to walk, I had a Snoopy fishing pole and learned how to grow up loving to fish. But it quickly, as I got older, became a lot more than that too. And so that's where some of the passion came from in just planning this topic and really wanting to share it with others is to help hopefully shed some light on how we can take the love of the outdoors and also look at it from a mental health perspective too.
Okay.
All right, so we wanted to start out just with a couple of basic images, but our guess is that it's relatable. Just looking at the image on the left, the skyscraper, the traffic, and then comparing that with the image on the right. And so just looking at how even the city life and the hustle and bustle can symbolize just feelings of stress or an experience of stress, whereas simply stepping away, being in something that's a slower pace and more of a natural setting can help us to de-stress. And so even just on a very basic level, looking at that aesthetically could make a big difference.
We hope that last picture has brought your blood pressure down a little bit tonight.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what is mental health? I think that as a licensed professional counselor, one thing that has been a little bit of a positive trend in recent years is that it seems like we're seeing some reduced stigma. So often hearing this term mental health can conjure up different thoughts, different ideas. But really here tonight, we want to talk about mental health from more of a preventative, proactive measure. What can we do even proactively to take care of ourselves as a whole person? So with this definition, what is mental health? Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And so just even pausing for a minute to think about that, we might hear the term self-care, and that's kind of become a little bit of a catch term in our society, but really pausing to think about what are the things that we do on a consistent basis to take care of ourselves as a whole person. Mental health also affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And it helps determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and also how we make choices. So looking at mental health is more than just an emotional dimension. We're multidimensional people, and our mental health impacts all those different dimensions. So just for a little example here, I want you to think with me for a moment of maybe a time or a season in your life, it could even be right now, that perhaps most of your basic needs were met. So I like to think of it as kind of getting back to your four walls. Maybe you have shelter, maybe you have food, you have all of your basic needs met, and yet maybe on some level, you're still feeling like there's just this general sense of unrest or just not being happy, not being well. And so with that, I want you to think about that. Kind of sets the stage a little bit for some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, because I think it's good for us to think about what contributes to that unwell feeling, even when all of our basic needs are met. So with that, we are living in a day and age where we are very overstimulated. And so from morning to night, just thinking of kind of a typical daily routine, that all too often we can kind of get just into a groove and put it on autopilot. And so maybe we don't even really pause to think about how that's impacting our nervous system. But let's just kind of think for a moment of a few things. So think of when you first wake up in the morning, most of us are woken up by some kind of an alarm clock, or maybe it's an alarm on your cell phone that's going off.
Except when the power goes out, like it did last night, and the alarm clock doesn't work.
Yeah,
I'll let you go on.
I know. I was thinking of that too. The storms kind of threw us a ride, didn't they?
They did.
Soon after that, most of us, myself included, jump right in and we're checking emails. We're jumping on social media. Maybe we go out to make the morning coffee and we quickly flip on the morning news. And so we've got that chatter, we've got those voices going as we're listening and taking in information. We jump in the car. What do we tend to do? We flip on the radio. We're listening to music or a talk show. So it continues. And this is okay. None of these things are inherently bad or a negative thing. However, if we pause to really think about how it affects us, it is still taxing our nervous system. It is stimulation that we are around oftentimes morning to night without a break or without a respite. And so from a mental health standpoint, why that is significant is that that is actually triggering in many ways what is called a stress response. So more of a speeding up of our sympathetic nervous system. And so you might pause just as a little bit of an experiment to check in with yourself throughout the day and just see if you're noticing any of the following symptoms. So it might show up as your heart beating a little bit faster, maybe your breathing rate getting a little bit faster. It can even be our adrenal glands, just sweaty palms, butterflies in your stomach or stomach upset, or even just muscle tension or headaches. And so all of that is typically over a period of time whenever we're staying in this heightened state for more of a chronic period of time. And so that's why we want to pause. And tonight we're going to talk about this in terms of the outdoors as a form of de-escalating or activating the parasympathetic nervous system, because we want to pay attention whenever our body is in a taxed state over a period of time.
So what does that mean? I mean, what's an RX for dealing with that stress? And Becky and I both feel this way, feel strongly about this. It helps us to be healthier as a whole person, physically, emotionally, and socially. I mean, just getting outdoors is great for the soul. And I'm strongly feel, and I'm glad my daughter, who's involved on a clinical level, can back that up, that nature is great for the soul.
We lost our light.
What happened to our lights?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, somebody put us back on. Okay.
I think we have a motion sensor. We were sitting still.
I like it. We must be sitting too still. Maybe we have to wave our arms more or something.
I know.
Wanted to start off just talking about our family roots and the outdoors. We're a typical Midwest family. For years, worked during the week, head outdoors on the weekend. Does that sound familiar? It does to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. We were brought up celebrating lake life, fishing, boating, stays at the family cottage. My parents had a cottage in Wisconsin. My first date with my wife was at the family cottage. I took her up to Wisconsin and with the family and everything. So weekends were a chance to leave behind the stress of city life and relax in the outdoors. Now, we lived in a fairly large city, Rockford, Illinois, and my dad was in charge of a big accounting firm in Rockford. And he lived, you could see the stress on his face. I mean, you really could. He brought home his work with him. He got pretty quiet. He would be talking, you know, you could see the stress that he brought home. But it was amazing when we went up to the lake, he just deflated. I mean, he just relaxed and enjoyed nature, enjoyed fishing with me and everything. It was just amazing the change that you could see in my father. He was classic for this syndrome where, you know, you just got to enjoy the outdoors and how he de-stressed in that setting.
Mhm.
But
And I can second that. You know, there were many times that I saw a whole different side of my grandfather, just being up at the lake, that his whole demeanor would change. I'm sure you have more firsthand memories of this than me, even looking at that image, but it's sentimental to us because yeah,
Wow.
just sweet first exposure to the love of fishing.
we laugh about that. By the way, the picture in that picture, the little girl on the right is now a big girl. She's sitting right next to me. And that's her sister, Jenny, on the left. And it's so funny because I had been fishing at night and I came in with this big bass and they both were, I said, do you want to touch it? And look at how timid they are in touching that fish. It just cracks me up. But that's really funny that we look back on that. But that's part of who we are. That's part of our background. Okay, talk about the mental health benefits of the outdoors. I love this quote. Nature itself is the best physician. Amen, Hippocrates. I just love that. Nature doesn't necessarily take away all of the life's troubles, but here are some of the common benefits. Improved attention, lower stress, better mood, reduced risk of psychiatric disorders, upticks in empathy and cooperation. And those have been proven clinically and anecdotally. Getting outdoors is just, it lowers the blood pressure. I've talked to a lot of people and even myself who have clinically, I mean, blood pressure items, problems. I mean, it does lower the blood pressure. Just hiking or fishing or being out on a lake or just sitting on a bench at the edge of the water.
Mhm. I was actually thinking of this the other evening as I was driving around town, and just even something as simple as a really pretty sunset, and just thinking of how that kind of naturally boosted my mood, and just contrasting that to what would I normally be doing indoors during that time. I'd be racing around, you know, good things, but taking care of household tasks, but probably a little different feeling than pausing to take in the beauty of a sunset. So wanted to talk with you a little bit about an exciting concept that is called the blue zones. And I don't know if it's something that any of you have heard of, but I became aware of it through a class that I've been teaching in the community called the Aging Mastery Program. And so I wanted to share it with you because it's pretty neat. And the basis of it is this study that was done by Dan Buettner, who was the founder of the Blue Zones. And he went on, he is a National Geographic Fellow and a multiple New York Times best-selling author. And so basically in his studies of the Blue Zones, he discovered 5 places in the world where people live the longest and are the healthiest. And so it basically came from this curiosity. What do these people have in common? What are they doing that contributes to them living longer? And also, how can we do more of that? How can we basically get on board with that trend and incorporate more of that into our own healthy living? And so he deemed the Power 9, which is the commonalities that lead to longer, healthier, and happier lives. And so one of the things that I talk about quite a bit in therapy and also just in outreach in the community is that we want to not only be living longer, we want quantity of life, but we also want quality of life. So we don't want to just be staying alive longer, but we want that to be enriched. We want it to be deeper. And so some of the highlights from his findings with these Blue Zones actually revealed that time spent in nature is associated with your psychological well-being and your overall health. So I know for me personally, when I've been doing research on different topics related to mental health in the outdoors, it definitely has sparked my curiosity in noticing that whenever we are healthier and outdoors and active, it actually boosts our immune system overall. And so that can be for several different reasons, but one, even from a mental health standpoint, your connection to nature can actually generate a positive effect on your happiness. And then out of that happiness, there's more of an overflow. So it can help decrease your stress levels. It can lower risk of depression and mental illness. And it also improves things like social interactions and engagement, your focus, your concentration, and also just how you manage your daily life. One of the things with managing your daily life is it also can improve your level of motivation, just even feeling like you have incentive or interest to get up and go. Lastly, being outside and spending time in natures increases our exposure to vitamin D. And so if you're like me, one of the seasons that I really notice a lack of vitamin D is in the winter months. And I'm really noticing kind of those slumps, those winter blues. And a lot of times I attribute that to not being outside as much. Or if I am outside feeling like the sun has sort of gone into hiding and we have lots and lots of gray days all in a row. And then the opposite is also true. If you have one of those rare sunny days, it sure makes a difference in just picking up your spirits, making you feel a little bit brighter. So this is a really nice time of year just to get a good dose of vitamin D with being outdoors.
You know, that's really fascinating to me when you talk to me about these blue zones, Becky, because how many people on here can really identify with what you're talking about and what Dan Buettner was talking about. I mean, like she was just saying, I mean, the wintertime when we get those dreary days and it's cold and we're inside, and especially during COVID, when we're inside and we're not having much much interaction with nature, yeah, it does lead, even if you're not clinically depressed, it leads to the temporarily depression. And I think this is fascinating what they're talking about here.
Mhm. It is.
The outdoors as the great equalizer. If that isn't true, I love that. Offers an inclusive experience for all ages, backgrounds, and abilities. I've always said fishing especially is the great equalizer. I mean, you can start fishing when you're big enough to hold a fishing rod, and you can do it until you're in your 80s or even 90s. I mean, it's just, you don't have to necessarily have a great skill level or whatever to go out fishing and to relax in the outdoors. Same thing with your backgrounds. I mean, all backgrounds can go fishing. You don't have to be rich and afford a huge bass boat or something like that. You can fish off the bank. You can fish at the neighborhood pond. You can fish at these small lakes that the Department of Conservation stocks. I mean, there are so many. It's so inclusive as an activity. Now, granted, when you get older, and I'm getting older, I'm 71, but maybe hiking, you're going to have to look for something that's more of an easy experience. But still, I mean, with fishing, they can wheel you in your wheelchair out onto the dock, and you can get out and you can do that. So there's the outdoors offers a lot of great opportunities.
Well, it's neat you say that, Dad, because I was thinking, even as you were saying that, I think for a lot of people, whether it's fishing or whether it's other outdoor activities, there's a certain degree of nostalgia that comes with it, just thinking back over the years and, special times spent outdoors or with loved ones outdoors. And again, from a mental health standpoint, we thrive on things that give us a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. And so one example of that, when you were saying we might have to adapt as we get older, I was talking with a gentleman a while back who was an older adult, and he had spent many years in a fishing boat, some of his favorite memories out with family members. And he told me, he said, well, my eyes aren't what they used to be, and it's harder for me to get in and out of the boat, much less to clamber around with all my tackle. So he said, I don't really fish much, but I still go along for the ride. And the smile on his face, was just a testimony that even though maybe his skill level or his ability was changing, that the love for fishing and the meaning behind it was still there.
I love that, Becky. I love that. Okay, we're going to talk about some anecdotal experiences that I've had with how nature and how fishing really provides some solace for a lot of folks. One of the big things when we were preparing this talk, I thought back to some experiences that I've had. Project Healing Waters is just so powerful. It's a program for vets who have been, a lot of them were combat vets. They're suffering from a lot of PTSD or sometimes physical problems where they're missing a limb or some other disability from war. And it teaches them to use fishing, particularly fly fishing for trout, as a coping mechanism. And I did a magazine story on this several years back. Teaches them to fly fish, tie flies, and even build fly rods. We were talking about that the winter blues. Well, they meet and they tie flies and they build fly rods, and then they can go out and they can use what they've built. And I was just amazed at how important this is to some of these people who have dealt with some pretty bad experiences. Some of these people that I interviewed, it gave them a whole new purpose in life to be out fly fishing, and particularly to use the flies that they themselves tied. So it was really, this is a picture at Bennett Spring of one of the veterans who was fly fishing in this beautiful setting, you know, with some flies that he had tied.
Great. Real sense of ownership with that too, to be able to make it and then use it. It's great.
Exactly. Going to give you a couple other examples, then Becky's going to give you some examples. Nature provides an opportunity for kids with special needs to fit in. Don't take that too lightly. I mean, our lives are pretty, you know, most of our kids in the mainstream, they take things for granted. They take things for granted that they can go out fish, or that they can go out and take a hike and stuff like that. Well, a lot of these kids, you know, that's not the case. I mean, I covered this fishing derby for kids with spina bifida, and it's just amazing the joy that this brings these kids. And in fact, one of the guys who put this thing on, well, he did put it on, he and his wife, he had spina bifida, but as he said, he was one of the lucky ones. He can walk, but he walked with a real bad limp. And but he put this derby on for kids. They would sign up, and he would he spent his whole year gathering fishing rods, used fishing rods, and making sure that they were tuned up and that they could be used. And then he also got donations for hot dogs and things like that. And he made sure that this special day of the year, that these kids with spina bifida, as he said, would have a non-intimidating setting, and they would be the kings and the queens for the day. They were treated like royalty, these kids, and to see these smiles, it was just so touching. It really was. I mean, they felt like they were, and he said so many of these kids were picked on or just shamed, and which is a shame that in this day and age this would happen, but it does happen. And this was a chance for them to do things that other kids did, and they were made to feel special. It was a feel good, one of my favorite feel good situations. Another thing, giving kids with Asperger's a sense of belonging. I did a story on a young man who, well, he was in high school, I think, or middle school, and he had Asperger's, and his mom made me aware of this situation. He loved to watch fishing shows on television, and he got to go on I set it up for him to go fishing with one of these hosts of these fishing shows. Got to take him out for this special fishing trip, and he was just thrilled. It was really, just talking to her, it was really powerful about Asperger's. I learned so much about Asperger's that day. She told me that he would take things literally when people would say something. She said if some other kids were down there and they told him to go jump in the lake, he would go jump in the lake. And again, we don't take time to understand that type of thing. And to see how much nature and how much fishing could bring joy to this kid. He went out with Jerry Adams, who had a local television show. Since then, Jerry has passed away. But I would like to somehow trace back and see how this young man is doing, because it was such a special day to see him out in the outdoors and using fishing as a sense of joy.
Mhm. You know, just to jump in and piggyback on that, I think of the wording we chose in sharing some of these testimonies, nature as the great equalizer. And it's neat, Dad, just hearing you describe that, because I think for many of us, you know, like in situations like that, maybe we're doing something in an effort to care for someone else or to show them to a good time, but just to hear how they impacted you too, it's neat. It's the great equalizer. You know, we need each other, which is great. Well, I wanted to share with you some trends that I've been noticing in integrating therapy and the outdoors. And it's fun because it truly is a way to think outside the box. So the first example that I have here is a scenario that I became aware of through a therapy colleague, a fellow therapist, that he used fishing to create a moment of breakthrough with an individual he was working with. So sometimes with clients who are on the autism spectrum, or it could be other diagnoses as well. Sitting in the confines of a therapy room can feel a little stuffy. It can feel a little bit awkward or a little bit intense. Sitting face to face or trying to focus on verbal communication, maintaining eye contact. Those are all things that sometimes can be difficult on the autism spectrum or with other mental health diagnoses too. So a creative solution that this individual came up with is he happened to come across in conversation that this individual enjoyed fishing. And so this therapist, this colleague, took his black lab and a tackle box, and with the mom's permission, they went out to a neighbor's fishing pond in his backyard. And boy, it was a meaningful moment for them to sit together and to pet this dog and to catch some fish while they were at it, but really just to break down some of those barriers and to make communication a little more comfortable.
That is great. That's a great story, Becky. Great story.
I know, pretty neat. And I think too, just realizing that oftentimes with therapy interventions, there's what we call like a parallel process, that it's not only what's taking place in the therapy room, like what we're talking about, but sometimes there's parallels between what we're talking about in therapy and what's actually taking place outside of therapy in their real life. And boy, when I think of something like that and just getting out and practicing some of those skills and just making it feel safe to do that together, I'm sure there were multiple levels of benefit to that with that individual. Another trend that I put up there on the right is something that is been known as walk and talk therapy. I'm sure there's different names for it too, but With this, a client would give consent. They would sign first, just noting that being outdoors maybe isn't the same level of confidentiality or privacy as sitting alone in an office setting. But if they're comfortable with that, the therapist and that individual would choose a setting that gives them a little bit of privacy, but yet still the ability to get outdoors and to walk and talk. And so again, just what I was alluding to a moment ago, that individuals of all ages, sometimes sitting and sitting face to face and communicating or talking about more sensitive topics can feel a little bit intense, can feel uncomfortable. I don't know how many times as a therapist I've had individuals say, gosh, coming into the therapy room, I had so many ideas for what I was going to say. And then I sit down and my mind just kind of goes blank sometimes, or it's hard for me to put it into words just to know what I want to say. And so just even being shoulder to shoulder and walking together instead of being face to face can diffuse some of the intensity with that direct communication. Another example of this that you may be practicing without even realizing is things like taking a kid or a teenager and going out and playing a game of catch. That maybe you're just tossing the ball back and forth, but pretty soon you're talking about, how was your day? What's going on? How are your friends? How's school going? And it makes it a little bit easier oftentimes to have some of those conversations over a game of catch than with the intensity of sitting face to face. So, as many of you may recall, when we were in the shutdown portion of the COVID pandemic, life kind of felt like it was doing a 180 for many of us. And I know for me personally, one thing that was very soothing and calming, especially during those beginning portions of COVID, was even being able to look outside and notice that some things stayed the same. That in a world that felt like it was changing a lot during the beginning of COVID, even little things like hearing the birds chirping outside or seeing the leaves change colors with the seasons, those are things that I'll admit, maybe at a previous time I kind of took those for granted and just kind of glazed on over it or took it for granted a little bit. But for me, that was something that brought an added layer of comfort, especially during the beginning of COVID, because it was a reminder that some things were still the same.
Becky, that's interesting that you say that, because when Mom and I were kind of in shutdown mode, we paid attention to our bird feeders. We really got in. We put out extra bird feeders, and we had books that would identify which birds we were seeing and that type of thing. So yeah, it's exactly a point on what you were just talking about. Okay, I'll let you get on with it.
I love it. I love it. And I got to benefit from the bird feeders too, so it's great. Well, I think just for outdoors enthusiasts, it was very neat to notice that there was a bit of a silver lining for the global pandemic. And one of those was just reigniting a passion for the outdoors. So many trends that we could talk about, but we just wanted to highlight a few with you here this evening. And so some of the things that we noticed were the sale of fishing and hunting licenses soared in most states. Pretty neat. If we were to track down those numbers, I think the percentage of increase would be pretty impressive, just to see how much of an increase there was. Also, state and national parks had record attendance. You know, people that maybe previously hadn't been to visit either state or national level parks were all of a sudden taking an interest, packing up the family, going on a road trip and getting outside, getting outdoors. Also with that, the sale of outdoor equipment was on the rise. So think of things like kayaks, canoes, you know, just anything that could kind of spark more of an interest in outdoor entertainment. And then since we couldn't go out and do these things that maybe we would normally do with our free time, like sporting events, concerts, movies, things like that. Instead, outdoor events became the new show in town. So pretty neat just to see a trend in that direction. And really, even since things have started to reopen, some of those patterns have stayed in place that I think some of that just caught on.
That's very interesting that you say that, Becky, because really, I mean, for a lot of these participation sports that were kind of lagging, the long-term trends were kind of troubling, especially with hunting.
Mhm.
This signaled a new opportunity. We got new hunters, we got new fishermen too. And now the trends are on the upward trends, but some of these people are saying in the wildlife departments and the fish and wildlife departments, they're saying we have to take advantage. We have to take advantage of this new trends. We have to, these new people that we're seeing. I think our motion uh, sensors are going off again, but we have to take advantage of this. We've got these new participants. How do we keep them? That's
Mhm.
the biggest challenge right now for a lot of these departments, and they've come up with some to real innovative ways to keep people involved. I mean, that's a challenge. I mean, yeah, you've got these new participants. How do you keep them? A
Mhm.
lot of the main problems is access and educating people about these sports. I mean, for instance, with hunting, teaching people that there are limits, that it's not an unlimited resource. You don't just go out and shoot everything you can or whatever. I mean, there are you have to be limited to how many you can take per day, and really educating people about the species itself.
Mhm.
You know, where does the deer live? Where do the quail live? Where do the ducks live? What's the easiest way to take them? And you want to show a respect for the game that you're hunting. Same thing with fishing. Yeah, little kids can go out and they can catch a couple of bluegills or something, but
Mhm.
it's more than just that. You have to teach them about the species they're trying to catch, and how much does it cost to go buy some bobbers and night crawlers and things like that. So that's a big part of it. It's once you get them in the introduction phase, you want to get them to the next phase so that they hold on. Right now, we're back to somewhat normal things. You can go to movies, you can go out to dinner, you can
Mhm.
do some of these things, but we'd like to show them the nature. Nature is a player.
Mhm.
Nature is a great thing to be involved in. It's a great lifetime thing. So we want to show them what is involved.
Mhm. Well, and it's neat because even as I'm listening to you describe that, like the sustainability of it, and how do we retain that, kind of brings me full circle to thinking about like why were so many of us drawn to perhaps for many people, a fairly new activity if they were venturing out to do some of these things for the first time, or maybe, like you said, to buckle down and get a little more serious about it. And I think of just kind of a few fun facts. One, having a sense of purpose is one of the most powerful anecdotes for symptoms of depression. And during the COVID pandemic, how many of us did one day just kind of turn into the next, and that sense of monotony, that's just not healthy. That's not good for any of us. And so I think having some of these outdoor hobbies and things to do gave a sense of purpose, gave a challenge. Maybe it kind of struck a chord with that competitiveness in trying something new or challenging. But also, if you look at our brain chemistry, we actually have these parts of our brain that like to have a reward. It's like the reward center of our brain. And so when we have a dopamine hit, when we have an increase in our dopamine, that gives us a sense of pleasure. And so whenever we're doing things in the outdoors, like these sports, or having success with something new that we're trying, part of the pleasure in that is that we're getting a dopamine hit. And so then that reinforces that we want more of it. So just kind of neat to think about how some of those pieces fit together.
For your dad, a dopamine hit means hooking a big bass
Yeah,
and getting it in the boat.
but of course.
Even though I have somebody take a picture and I let it go. But it's still just, it's the excitement of being out in nature and really being able to fool a bass in its own habitat into thinking that the lure I'm throwing is something that it wants to eat. I mean, yeah, I set my goals low in life, but but for me, that's a fantastic thing.
Think like a fish.
I do. I do.
Well, so that lends well. This final slide here that we wanted to share with you this evening is a quote that is something that we've both enjoyed and just commented on after many hours that we've spent together in the fishing boat, is by Henry David Thoreau. Many men go fishing all of their lives without knowing that it is not fish they are after. And I think about, just some of those conversations that we've had of, some of the best fishing trips. Yeah, it's marked by the number of fish that we catch or the size of the fish that we caught. But gosh, there's some beautiful fishing trips that we've gone out together and maybe not got skunked, but we didn't have too many fish that we were pulling in. And yet, just a lot of good quality time together, or seeing wildlife, or just slowing down for a little bit to be outdoors.
Yeah, that's a good point, Becky. I mean, some of the talks we've had, Becky is one busy woman. I mean, with her practice and all of the boards and things that she is involved with, and we get out and go fishing, and I could see her de-stress right away. And we talk about life. We talk about her kids, my granddaughters. We talk about what's going on in our lives, and yeah, we're fishing, and it's great if we catch some fish. But it's also great that we can talk, and it gives us quality to add the typical quality time, quality family time. It gives us a chance to just really relate and enjoy being with each other. So
absolutely. Well, lastly here, we did just want to give you our email addresses, and here in a moment, we'll take some time for question and answer too, because partly what makes this meaningful is just hearing from you and just hearing your thoughts, your questions, maybe some of your own personal testimonies of your own experiences. But sometimes I find that for me, it's not until afterwards that I start really thinking about some things. So please feel free to jot down either of our email addresses. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions that you might have.
And I think they're gonna have a chance to ask questions in the upcoming and either what, Becky, by typing
Mhm.
them or by talking directly to us?
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to go ahead and take down our presentation, and looks like we still have a few minutes here for tonight. So feel free, either format, really, whatever you're most comfortable with. If you'd like to put it in the chat, we can read those through and answer them that way. Or if you want to take it off mute and ask your question, that's fine too.
Well, I have a question. You were talking about the blue zones and the places that he discovered. What do you know where those places were that he decided were the blue zones?
I know, that's a good question. I know it's an interesting concept, isn't it? So
I think Becky and I are gonna move there.
I know, let's do it.
Means we can live longer and enjoy nature.
Yes, please. Let's do it. I'm hoping I kept them in here. I know I went through to kind of make it more abbreviated, and so I cut some of the content out, but if I don't have it still typed in here, I can certainly get it over to you too. Well, let's see. I think I did go through and edit it out for the presentation. So I can email it over to you though, because unfortunately, I don't have it right here in front of me.
Oh yeah, not a problem. That would be great. Someone said Loma Linda, California is one.
Is one? Yeah, good. Thank you, Karen. That's great. I know that what really stands out to me in the study is that a lot of the communities were in close proximity, like were people that were living in close proximity in like a village or a community where they were able to either walk or bike to many of the things in their everyday life. So like going to the store or going down like to like a downtown like center area, that it was very easy to get to the different places in their everyday life. And so they not only were more active, but they were also more connected with one another, which is interesting. I couldn't tell you the last time I didn't just jump in the car to go run to the store. So kind of puts it in perspective thinking about it.
Exactly. Any other questions or observations? Are we, the people listening to our program, are you outdoors people or are you outdoor people wannabes?
Love hiking. Oh, that's good.
Okay,
That's great.
great.
Yeah, I'll second the hiking and biking. And I know when the doctor told me I shouldn't run anymore because of my knees, I was like, till I found something else to do. It was hard.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and what a great mindset. That goes back to what you were saying earlier about, we have to adapt sometimes, right? And it's hard. I understand. I'm the same way. We don't want to let go of the way we used to be able to do it. But kudos to you for keeping an open mind to adapting to something else.
And bringing that up, I mean, about hiking and everything. I love the fact that we're in the Parkville branch while we're doing this, we're doing this program. I'm on the board for the Friends of Parkville Nature Sanctuary. I'm very proud of our nature sanctuary. It's right in the middle of a busy, hustling and bustling setting. And it's just amazing how you pull into that parking lot for the Parkville Nature Sanctuary and you start hiking on these trails and you feel like you're in Colorado or something like that. We have a beautiful waterfall that a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people who, you know, they'll just take an hour or so out of their day just to decompress. You know, they pull into the nature sanctuary and they'll take a short hike. It's just a short hike, maybe over their lunch hour. They'll take a short hike into the waterfall and just sit on a bench there and just enjoy nature. And it's perfect for what Becky and I are talking about.
Mm-hmm. I see there's a couple more comments coming in. Let me just real quick speak to, because I was able to pull up the 5 blue zones. So those 5 locations are Sardinia, Italy, the islands of Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Ikaria, Greece, and then like Karen said, Loma Linda, California.
Wow, that is very interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's not at all what I would think.
Yeah, a lot of different types of climates and locations.
The islands of Okinawa, Japan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty neat.
Okay, we have some other comments here from somebody who loves gardening and loves the Parkville Nature Sanctuary. Yes. We have our garden, our nature garden there at the nature sanctuary is a great place to just sit and watch. If you can see all the pollinators come into the wildflowers in our wildflower garden. It's a great place to relax. I sometimes go down there and just sit on the bench, and in fact, I've purchased bricks for each one of my grandkids and my kids. They have like a patio that's made of bricks to remember maybe some loved ones that passed away and some that are still there. I've got bricks for all my grandkids there now, so it's kind of forever outdoors. That's what we say on each one of the bricks, forever outdoors.
Oh, that's great. And then Kelly, I like your comment there too. I want to enjoy outdoors more. I didn't really get exposed to outdoor activities growing up, other than visiting the local wildlife center sometimes. Burros. Yeah, there you go.
We love to hike out there too.
That's neat. Yeah, that's great. Well, and what a great thank you for just even putting that out there, because it just goes to show, right? Like we can jump in with these new habits or activities or hobbies at any point, and sometimes it's the unexpected things that kind of spur that on or make us want to seek it out more. So that's great.
And I will give credit to the Missouri Department of Conservation for bringing outdoor activities to the city. I mean, like Burr Oak Woods. I mean, I think the nature center out there is a great way to enjoy the outdoors. They've got great hiking trails out of Burr Oak. They've got their nature center. They've got an arboretum where you can just real close to the birds outside. They've got so many bird feeders. You can watch just all the warblers, the beautiful warblers and the woodpeckers and that type of thing. But you can also see, what I get a kick out of is wild turkeys come and use those bird feeders. I've got a great picture of a wild turkey that's on his tiptoes to get at one of the bird feeders. He's trying to get some bird feed, but you know, they're set up in the air, so he's got to get up on his tiptoes just to get some seeds. It's really funny.
That's great.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? We're available. Well, to that point, we really appreciate you joining us. This is a special for Becky and I. This is the first time we've done a program together, and Becky, I will applaud you for giving, you know, more than just an anecdotal look at these things that you have. Your research is fascinating about like the blue zones and some other things, and the healing power of the outdoors. I mean, I can talk anecdotally, but you've put research to some of those things, and I think that adds to the validity of what we're saying. It's not just like, well, yeah, anybody can come up with anecdotes, but you've come up with some meaningful research, and I appreciate that, Beck.
Thanks, Dad. Well, I'm a big believer, and it's fascinating to me to look at, you know, why do we do what we do? Let's take a deeper look. So I hope that's been valuable to the rest of you as well. And gosh, you know, just to even take a chance after logging off tonight to think about, you know, what are some things that maybe you're already doing that fall into some of these categories of things that are soothing to you or relaxing to you, but then maybe also just kind of challenging yourself. You know, we all have room to grow. And so is there something that we can do even in the middle of our busy routine that perhaps incorporates a little bit more time outdoors too?
By the way, I like, who is it, Kelly? I like your signature there, your picture
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's
Well,
great.
thank you, Becky and Brent, for a great program this evening. I put the link to the survey in the chat. So again, if you can fill that out and let us know how we did, this program is grant funded. So that also helps us continue to get funding for more programs like this. And if you want to watch the program again, or if you know somebody who might be interested in it, it will be up on our MCPL YouTube channel probably within a week.
Great.
And I don't have the dates in front of me, but Brent will be back in August and September with talking about places you can go to hike and bike and fish and do all those things in the outdoors. So.
And Becky and I have one in-person.
Yeah,
talk.
and
I don't have it. Do you
I
have
can
that?
tell you, yeah, I can tell you here in just a second. Oh, I went to the wrong screen.
It's later this month.
It's later.
It's in Oak Grove.
Yeah.
Okay. Seems to me I remember June 21st, but
21st is what I was thinking, and I want to
I
double.
was thinking
Yeah.
June 21st.
June 21st at 6:30.
At 6:30 at the Oak Grove branch.
Yeah.
So.
And then, yeah, you do also have inexpensive outdoor family getaways in July, July 12th at Buckner and July 21st at Smithville. So.
Yep. So, well, we really appreciate everybody joining us. I sincerely hope that you got something out of this, that maybe got some ideas on how to deal. Maybe you have some problems that you're trying to deal with, and maybe nature, don't overlook the fact that nature can help. I mean, some of my down times, I live close to the Parkville Nature Sanctuary. When I've been down, especially during COVID, when we were all cooped up and everything,
Yeah.
I would drive to the Parkville Nature Sanctuary and just take a short hike or sit on the bench there by the waterfall and decompress, like
Mhm.
Becky's talking about so much.
Mhm. Exactly. And even if it's not a cure-all, even if the even if the stressors are still there, sometimes it's nice just to have a reprieve, just to take a break. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Great.
Well, thank you guys. I just echo that. Thank you for logging on and joining us tonight. And feel free, if you have any other questions, just reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.